My name is Marilyn Cooper. I am 52 years old, and for the past 27 years I have lived for one person only, my son Ryan. I raised him alone after his father walked out. I carried every burden, worked night shifts at the hospital cafeteria, and stretched every dollar until it nearly broke. To me, Ryan's wedding was supposed to be the proof that I had done something right, that all those sacrifices had led him to become the man he was meant to be. But the night before the ceremony, everything I believed in collapsed with just one sentence. I had stopped by the rehearsal dinner with a small gift, a scrapbook of Ryan's life that I had worked on for weeks. Every page held a piece of our story, from scraped knees to law school acceptance letters. I thought his fiancée, Madison Clark, might appreciate seeing what shaped the man she was about to marry. I stood at the doorway, scrapbook pressed against my chest, heart beating with quiet pride. Madison appeared, flawless as always, perfect smile, perfect hair, and a dress that could have graced a magazine cover. But her eyes were cold, colder than I had ever seen them. She didn't look at the scrapbook. She looked straight at me, leaned close enough that no one else could hear, and whispered words that burned like acid. "After tomorrow, you're not part of this family anymore." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My knees felt weak, my hands shook, and the scrapbook nearly slipped. I whispered, "Excuse me." She smirked, repeating it more clearly, "You raised him, but tomorrow he becomes mine. You are just extra baggage. Do us both a favor and don't come." Her tone was sharp, her eyes almost amused. I froze, silent, clinging to the book like it was the only thing keeping me upright. That night, I drove home in a haze, sat on the edge of my bed, and stared at the scrapbook. My tears blurred the photos, but somewhere beneath the heartbreak, anger stirred. I whispered to the empty room, "If I am not family tomorrow, then tomorrow I will not be there at all." And with that decision, the story truly began. When Ryan was only 7 years old, his father packed a single suitcase and walked out the front door. I still remember the sound of it closing, sharp and final, like the ending of a chapter we had not agreed to finish. Ryan clutched a toy dinosaur in one hand and asked me when Dad was coming home. I had no answer. I only pulled him close and promised him that no matter what, I would always be there. That promise became the compass of my life. From that night forward, it was just the two of us. I became the breadwinner, the caregiver, the cheerleader, and the disciplinarian, all rolled into one. I worked late nights in the hospital cafeteria, the smell of disinfectant and coffee clinging to my uniform as I stumbled home at dawn. Some mornings I barely managed to pack Ryan's lunch before collapsing for an hour of sleep. Yet whenever he came home waving a paper with a gold star, or handed me a handmade Mother's Day card with crooked hearts and misspelled words, the exhaustion faded. In those moments, I felt rich in ways money could never measure. Vacations were out of reach. Promotions slipped away because I could not commit to overtime or weekend hours. I learned how to stretch every dollar, how to fix a leaky faucet with duct tape, how to make soup last 3 nights. Ryan never knew the depth of those sacrifices. I hid the tiredness behind smiles, determined that his childhood would not be defined by absence or lack. To the world he might have looked like any other boy, but to me he was proof that love could fill even the emptiest spaces. As he grew, I saw his character forming. He studied harder than anyone, fueled not by competition but by conviction. One night, when he was a teenager, I found him at the kitchen table surrounded by textbooks. He looked up and said, "Mom, I want to be a lawyer." I asked him why, expecting him to talk about success or money. Instead, he said, "I want to protect people who can't protect themselves the way you always protected me." Those words carried me through countless weary shifts. They reminded me that every sacrifice mattered, every missed opportunity had built something greater. By the time Ryan walked across the stage at law school graduation, I knew that I had kept my promise. I had raised a man who was kind, intelligent, and strong. His wedding, I believed, would be the moment when all those years of struggle transformed into joy, not just for him but for me too. Or so I thought. When Ryan first introduced me to Madison, I wanted to like her. She had that polished confidence that could light up a room, and she carried herself like someone who knew exactly where she was headed. Ryan's eyes sparkled in her presence, and for that reason alone, I tried to open my heart. After years of imagining I might gain a daughter, I thought maybe this was it, but almost from the beginning there were cracks I tried too hard to ignore. In public, Madison was flawless. She laughed at my stories, asked polite questions, and put on the charm that made everyone believe she was perfect for my son. Yet the moment Ryan left the room, her tone shifted. She would sigh impatiently, check her phone, or let her smile fade into something closer to disdain. It was subtle at first, easy to excuse as nerves. I told myself she was simply trying to find her place in our family dynamic, but deep down, a whisper of doubt began to form. The birthday incident should have told me everything. For Ryan's 26th birthday, I stayed up half the night baking his favorite chocolate fudge cake with peanut butter frosting, a tradition we had kept since he was 10. When I carried it out, candles glowing, Madison looked at it and gave a sweet but cutting remark. "Oh, how quaint. Ryan's on a new diet now. I'll make sure he doesn't touch this." She took the knife from my hand, set the cake aside, and carried on as if she had done him a favor. Ryan laughed awkwardly, kissed my cheek, and thanked me, but I caught the guilt flicker in his eyes. He knew what that cake meant. He knew I had poured myself into it. Moments like that piled up. Madison rarely asked about Ryan's childhood, about the years we scraped by together, or even about my work. Conversations were steered toward her career, her glamorous friends, her plans for the future. Whenever Ryan mentioned his dream of doing pro bono work to help underprivileged clients, she rolled her eyes and quickly changed the subject to salaries or promotions. I began to see what she valued, and it wasn't kindness or sacrifice, it was status. Still, I told myself love was enough. That if Ryan adored her, I would find a way to accept her. So when the engagement came, I hoped things would change, that perhaps she would see me as part of the family. Instead, the distance only grew. Madison took full control of every detail. I wasn't invited to a single dress fitting, cake tasting, or seating chart discussion. When I asked gently if I could help, she gave me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Don't worry, Mrs. Cooper, we've got it under control. You just show up looking nice, okay?" Her words stung, but I nodded and bit my tongue. For Ryan's sake, I told myself. Always for his sake. The morning of the wedding arrived with pale sunlight slipping through the curtains. My body moved on instinct at first. I boiled water for coffee, laid out the pale blue dress I had bought months earlier, the one Ryan once said, "Mom, that color looks beautiful on you." For a few minutes I let myself believe this would be a normal day, one filled with pride and celebration. But then Madison's words from the night before cut through my thoughts like a knife. "After tomorrow, you're not part of this family anymore." I sat at the kitchen table staring at the rising steam from my mug. My hands trembled, not from age but from the weight of the decision I already knew I had made. I was not going. For the first time in 27 years, I was choosing myself over Ryan. Maybe it was selfish, maybe cowardly, but I could not bring myself to sit in that church pew and watch him vow his life to a woman who had already erased me from the picture. By 9 o'clock, my phone buzzed with messages from relatives. "Mom, we are heading to the venue now. Can't wait to see you. Where are you? You're running late, aren't you?" I turned the phone face down on the table. At 10, my sister knocked at the door, still in her bridesmaid's dress. "Marilyn, what on earth are you doing?" "Everyone's looking for you. The ceremony starts in an hour." I met her eyes, tears brimming. "He's marrying someone who told me last night that I am not family. She doesn't want me there. So why should I go?" She froze, her anger faltering into disbelief. "But Marilyn, if you don't go, people will blame you. They will say you abandoned your son." I let out a bitter laugh. "Then let them. I have been judged my whole life. What is one more?" As the church bells began to ring across town, I sat in silence, my dress hanging untouched, the scrapbook hidden under my bed. I thought I had chosen absence, but I had no idea that absence was about to reveal the truth in a way no presence ever could. At 10:30 that morning, while guests were filing into the church, and Ryan adjusted his tie in a small waiting room, the first crack appeared. His best man, Mark, burst through the door pale and shaking. "Ryan, you need to see this," he said, thrusting his phone into my son's hands. On the screen were photos of Madison dressed casually, wrapped in the arms of another man. The man was no stranger. He was her boss, the one she always praised as her mentor. The photos were recent, only 2 weeks old. Ryan's face drained of color. His chest rose and fell as though the air itself had betrayed him. Mark's voice trembled. "Her neighbor sent these to me. He thought you deserved to know before you made the biggest mistake of your life." The weight of the truth he had been ignoring suddenly crashed over him. All the late nights at the office, the secretive messages, the dismissive laughter when he asked questions. It was all true. Madison had been lying. While Ryan staggered under the shock, whispers began to ripple through the church. Madison's maid of honor, already tipsy from champagne, had let something slip to a guest. Madison had not only been unfaithful, she had been scheming. Her family had pressured her into the engagement because Ryan stood on the brink of a promising career. The prenup she had insisted upon was not for his protection. It was written to funnel his future earnings into her family's control. Her father, Richard Clark, had even bragged to a guest that once Madison married Ryan, their financial troubles would vanish. By 11:15, the church was a storm of murmurs and confusion. Ryan stepped into the aisle, his jaw tight, his hands still trembling, but his voice steady enough to echo across the pews. "There will be no wedding today," he declared. "Madison has betrayed my trust." Gasps erupted, followed by the outraged cries of Madison's parents. Her mother wailed. Her father shouted about humiliation. Madison herself tried to grab Ryan's arm, insisting it was a misunderstanding, but the photos told a story no denial could erase. Guests shifted uncomfortably, some whispering about the wasted expense, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Within minutes, phones were buzzing, social media posts multiplying. Headlines would soon follow. Wedding canceled minutes before vows, bride exposed. And while all of this unfolded, I sat miles away in my quiet living room, unaware of the exact details, but feeling in my bones that the truth had finally broken through. When my sister called, her voice shaking, all she said was, "Marilyn, the wedding is not happening. You need to sit down." By the time the church had emptied and the guests returned home in stunned silence, another storm had already begun to brew. Madison was not about to accept defeat quietly. That very evening she posted a photo of herself in her ruined wedding dress, mascara streaked down her cheeks, with the caption, "Some people just can't let go." Some mothers don't know when to stop. Within hours, the picture spread across social media. Sympathy poured in from strangers who knew nothing of the truth. They saw only a heartbroken bride and the implication that I, Marilyn Cooper, was the villain. Friends and neighbors began calling, some cautious, others outright accusatory. "Marilyn, did you really tell Ryan not to marry her?" I felt my stomach twist at their words. Even people I had known for years questioned my character. I wanted to shout the truth, to tell them Ryan himself had seen the photos, that Madison's betrayal was undeniable. But I stayed silent, partly because Ryan begged me not to respond. "Mom, don't stoop to her level. Everyone close to us knows what really happened." Yet the problem was not everyone did. Lies travel faster than truth, and Madison's family knew how to play their parts. 2 days later, the mail brought something more chilling than gossip. A thick envelope containing a legal letter from Richard Clark's attorney. They accused me of defamation, emotional damages, even interference with contractual relations. The words blurred as I read them, my hands trembling. Contractual relations? What was this if not intimidation? They were not content to smear my name in whispers. They wanted to destroy me formally, legally, financially. I carried the letter straight to my friend Susan Reed, who worked at a law office downtown. She scanned the papers, then shook her head. "Marilyn, this is pure intimidation. They are trying to scare you into silence." That phrase lodged itself in my chest. Scare me into silence. Madison had told me I was not family, and now her parents were trying to erase me completely. But what they did not realize was that fear had long ago lost its hold on me. I had survived loneliness, poverty, and years of single motherhood. If they thought threats could undo me now, they had badly underestimated the woman they were dealing with. A week later, an invitation arrived from the Clarks. They called it a dinner to resolve misunderstandings, but I knew better. Ryan begged me not to attend. "Mom, they will ambush you. Please let me handle this." But I could not stay away. They had dragged my name through the mud, and if I did not face them, their story would become the only story. So I ironed the pale blue dress I had once planned to wear to the wedding and walked into the hotel ballroom with my head held high. The room was set like a stage, chandeliers glittering above polished tables. At the head sat Richard Clark and his wife, with Madison poised beside them in a sleek black dress, her smile sharp as glass. "Well," Richard said smoothly, "look who decided to join us. Miss Cooper, we were just discussing how to resolve this unfortunate misunderstanding." I met his gaze steadily. "Misunderstanding? Do you mean the affair or the fraud?" I placed a thick folder on the table. Inside were financial records, bankruptcy filings, and most importantly, the prenup. I flipped to a page I had highlighted, Clause 14, Subsection 3. In the event of divorce within 5 years, 75% of Ryan Cooper's income shall be transferred into accounts held jointly by Madison Clark and her father, Richard Clark. Gasps rippled through the table. Even Ryan, who had skimmed the document but never studied it in detail, turned pale. You were planning to gut him, I said coldly. You wanted his future to patch your family's failures. Richard's face flushed crimson. You have no right to cut him off. I have every right because you smeared my name to hide your schemes. Madison leaned forward, her voice low but venomous. You would not dare make this public. I leaned in closer. Watch me. The confrontation spiraled into chaos. Richard threatened lawsuits, his wife wept about family unity. Madison insisted the photos were fake. Ryan sat frozen, his world crumbling. Finally he rose, his voice shaking but firm. You lied to me. You told my mother she was not family, and all along you were planning to use me. If you loved me, you would never have tried to erase her. For the first time, Madison's mask cracked, desperation spilling through. She reached for him, but he stepped back. I am done. He turned to me, offered his arm, and together we walked out, leaving their empire of lies behind us. After the confrontation at the hotel, I knew the Clarks would not stop quietly. Their threats and whispers had power only because they controlled the narrative. Madison still painted herself as the heartbroken victim, and her parents framed me as the jealous mother who could not let go. If perception was their weapon, then truth would have to be mine. With Susan Reed's help, I gathered everything. We had copies of the prenup, financial records, even bankruptcy filings that stretched back nearly a decade. Susan connected me with a financial investigator who confirmed what we suspected. The Clarks were drowning in debt. Their plan had been simple. Madison would marry Ryan and the prenup would funnel his income directly into their accounts. It was never about love. It was about survival for their failing empire. We handed the evidence to a journalist who specialized in financial scandals. Within a week, the article went live. Behind the canceled wedding, Clark family's financial schemes exposed. It was damning. Every predatory clause in the prenup was laid out. Their history of bankruptcies was detailed. The affair was mentioned just enough to explain why the wedding had collapsed. For the first time, the public saw the story not from Madison's staged tears, but from the cold weight of facts. The reaction was swift. Sympathy that had once flowed toward Madison turned on her like a tide. Comments filled with outrage called her a gold digger, a fraud, a woman who had tried to erase a mother for the sake of money. People who once whispered accusations about me now sent messages of support. I was no longer the villain. I was a mother who had refused to be erased. Ryan, though heartbroken, found strength in the truth. He poured himself into his new job at the law firm, determined to build a career on integrity rather than illusion. Some nights I found him sitting on the porch, staring at the stars, quiet but resolute. One evening he reached for my hand and whispered, "Mom, you were always my family. Always." His voice carried both grief and gratitude, and in that moment I knew the storm had finally begun to pass. Looking back now, I realized that the hardest battles are not always fought in courtrooms or at family dinners. Sometimes they are fought in the quiet moments, in the decision to stand firm when everyone expects you to bend. Madison told me I was not family. Her parents tried to silence me with threats. But in the end, truth has a way of clawing itself into the light, and when it did, their carefully built facade crumbled. The lesson I carry from this is simple but powerful. Never let anyone convince you that you do not belong in the very family you built with your own sacrifices. I spent years believing that silence was the price of keeping peace. I let myself be dismissed, ignored, even erased. But peace built on lies is not peace at all. It is surrender. That night I chose absence from the wedding. I thought I was stepping back in defeat. What I did not know was that my absence would make space for the truth to surface. Ryan still carries scars from what happened. Betrayal leaves marks no courtroom or article can erase. But he also carries strength. He saw firsthand that love is not measured by status or wealth but by loyalty and honesty. He learned that when someone tries to cut out the people who have stood by you through every storm, that person does not deserve a place in your future. And he tells me often now, "Mom, I should have listened sooner," but sometimes we all need to walk through fire before we recognize who is really standing with us. If you are listening to this, maybe you have faced something similar. Maybe someone has tried to push you aside, to tell you that you do not matter. Let my story remind you, you are not baggage, you are not extra. You are part of the foundation that others stand on, even if they forget it. And when the truth finally emerges, as it always does, those who tried to erase you will have to face their own reflection. So I leave you with this. Never surrender your place in the story of your life. Stand firm in who you are and what you have given. And if this story touched you, share your thoughts in the comments, press like, and subscribe to The Art of Revenge for more stories of resilience and truth. Together, let us make sure no voice is silenced, no sacrifice forgotten, and no mother erased from the family she fought so hard to hold together.